Welcome, welcome, welcome to You've Championed Yourself. Who are you? I'm Chris Ferguson, your host. It has always been a dream of mine to showcase ordinary people doing extraordinary things in their lives and for humanity. It is those who have taken their dreams and their ideas and turned it into a reality, changing the world. As we reach beyond their personal struggles and their pains and traumas, where so many people give up and lose hope, there are those few that no matter what happens in their life, they walk through their obstacles. They walk past their challenges, not knowing where it's going to take them, not knowing what it was going to bring in their life. They just trusted themselves enough not to give up, to do the follow through in their personal life, their career, and in relationships. These are what I call champions in people every day. Today, I have an amazing guest. Her name is Sharon Lynn Wyeth, and she is a name expert. And the science of this for me as a criminal profiler is I'm just busting at the seams to start asking her all kinds of amazing questions. And so this is different. I've never heard of this before. So we're all going to learn something new. So let's welcome Sharon.
Wonderful to be with you, Chris.
So excited. So excited. I like numerology. I like astrology. I understand the movement of the planets. But as a name expert, how does your name impact you?
Well, it is literally your blueprint for your life. It literally will give you your timing, just like astrology gives you timing. It will let you know what your strengths are, what your challenges are, what your 7 subsets of your overall goal on the soul's purpose is in this lifetime. And it literally will say how well you interact with other people and what your communication style is, how to upsell, how to downsell, whatever. I mean, your communication, what kind of gifts you like, how you show love, how you receive love. I mean, there's so much impacted in the name. It's just really exciting.
I never knew that. I knew that, as far as your astrology, the date, the month, the year, and the time is very, very important. And it can have some predicting factors in your life, but also how the planets are aligning. But
what's really nice about namology, Chris, is that you don't need somebody's cooperation. You just need their name. So like in astrology, you need to know their birth date. You need to know their birth time. You don't need that for the name. Okay. In numerology, you still need the birth date. You don't need that. In the name, you only need the name, and any part of the name starts giving you information. So the first name is the essence of who you are in this lifetime. If you have a middle name, it lets you know what qualities you're coming in with that you've already acquired either in a previous life somewhere, wherever those are. And then your last name represents your environment and what the pressures are going to be on you and what you're going to learn from the people around you. So you learn how to drop, and it's actually very easy. You drop the first name into the last name, and that's how you see how nurture is going to, influence the nature of the person. So you get both, and that's why everybody with the same first name isn't the same.
I love that. I just love that. How did you create numerology?
Okay, so namology came about because in my 7th year of teaching in the classroom, I had to do a seating chart, and I recognized that as I was what I considered randomly putting down names for a seating chart before the kids came in at the first day of school, my brain was saying, oh, don't you put Joshua next to Julie, because together they're going to be clowns, and Stephanie's going to be stubborn, put her over here, and Derek's going to need extra help, put him up close. And it wasn't until I was doing the seating chart for the 4th class that it dawned on me. I went, wait a minute, I don't know these kids yet. All I have is their names. So I went back and wrote down my impression of everybody by their name, put it aside till winter break. And I said, I want to get to know the students for who they are. So when I read that over our winter break, I was astounded at its accuracy. So I said, okay, my brain, thoroughly trained in patterns because I'm a math major and I have my master's degree, said, okay, my brain's picked up a pattern in names. How do I make this conscious? That took me 15 years to figure out all the placements and the patterns and the names. And then I went and tested it for 3 years in over 70 countries to see its accuracy. And I kept thinking, if I was off, somebody's going to call me on it. Everybody said, where can we find out more information? So I kept going.
That is amazing, because who would have thought that your name could describe you before they meet you, because I deal in frequencies. And so I understand how your vibration levels can introduce you long before you ever speak.
And it's carried in the name, those vibrations. And every letter has its vibration. And then together, when you have the whole name, there's your song.
Ooh, I like that. I'm all about frequencies and music. So that's amazing. One of the things I was going to say, but I think you already answered this. Please explain how your name says something about you as a person.
Well, let's just look at the first name. Okay. The first letter is the first impression that people give you. So like with your name, Chris, your first impression is you're the one in charge. And everybody's going to know that when they first meet you. That's your first impression. Okay. Mine is an S, and everybody's going to go, that lady's smart. Okay. And that's the first impression. Okay. Then your first vowel in your first name is your communication style, how you show love, how you learn, how you make a purchase. There's so much in just the first vowel that I wrote a whole book. My third book is Know the Name, Know How to Connect. And it's absolutely accessible free on my website for anybody who's interested in just reading that book. I think it's so important that we know how people communicate so we know how to connect and how to show them that they're loved in a style they can receive it. And that's the first vowel in the first name. Then the last letter in the first name is the lasting impression that we give each other. And so it's the first thing somebody's going to say about you behind your back. Okay. So, and then all the rest are what I call the middle letters. And those are the subtleties that you need to get to know somebody better. And you start getting those subtleties. And then just like if you're sitting next to somebody and you like that person, you're going to want to be talkative and interacting. But if you don't care for that person, you're going to behave totally differently. It's the same thing with the letters. Now, this is what makes namology very different than numerology, because numerology will talk about the placement of the first vowel and the placement of the first letter. But then it doesn't talk about the other placements of letters. And it definitely doesn't cover what happens when the two letters sitting next to each other. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they have their own system where they turn everything into numbers. In my system, there's no numbers. I know that everybody thinks, oh, she's a math major, it involves numbers. And the answer is no, other than knowing how to add, single digits and able to get up with what's going to happen when in your life or timing. Okay. And that's it. And so what's really kind of cool is when you put two letters together, they interact and they interplay. Just like if you have a marriage, now that couple responds differently than either one of the individuals do. Mm-hmm. Okay. So for an example, let's take the C and the H. Okay. Just as an example. Mm-hmm. And so the C says, I want to be in charge because my way is right. And over 90-something% of the time, you guys are right. Everybody who starts with that C. So you guys are good at being in charge and you don't make mistakes very often. So then we have the H that says, oh, I'm going to let go and go with the flow and see what happens. So now you put the C that wants to be in charge next to the H that wants to let go, and you do things the hard way because you got this inner conflict going on. Do I stay in charge here? Or do I let go here? Which way?
There is some truth to that. Absolutely truth to that. Yes. I'm validating.
And so you have that with different letters as they combine. And so that's really important because to me, those are the hidden things that people don't talk about, but that's who they are. And only when you're around them often enough are you going to see those attributes.
One of the things, though, that for me, as I've always had these leadership positions, I would rather be the observer, which would be the going with the flow. Let's check this out. Let's see what happens. Let's see how, if it needs tweaking or improving, let's do that so it's easier for everybody else. That is also something else that I do. So I just had a different interpretation of the C and the H as you were saying that. So I was like, yeah, I do. I'd like to go be laid back and be that observer.
Right. Then that's the H. And then the C is, but when I'm in charge, everything goes smoothly. So mm-hmm. When am I going to be in charge and when am I going to let go?
I'm the same both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
It doesn't change. It's not interactive or it doesn't change. I like to go with the flow, but I lived a duality because in my intuitive world didn't flow with the law enforcement world. That was a major duality. And so I'm wondering if the C and the H could have meant also the conflict of that duality in my profession and in my personal life.
Yeah, it always means that we have that inner struggle. Where do we fit? How are we going to handle this situation? And then in your rest of your name is inclusivity, where you want to be included and you want to include others. So you're looking at not just your family, but the family of man.
Mm-hmm. I am a humanitarian.
Yeah. So that's all in the name. And then as you keep going with your name, it's like you've got a piece in there that says, I can be stubborn, and that's what I'm getting in my own way, or I can be persistent and I'm going to follow this through and make sure it gets done. And that's when you get out of your own way. So it depends. So to me, that's two sides of the same coin. Are we going to use it with the challenge, which is getting in our own way, or are we going to use it in the higher level, which is the productive persistence?
I have an event coming up next month in Maui. And in one day, I did a presentation of 56 PowerPoint slides.
Wow.
And did it in 8 hours. That's how persistent I was to get it done.
Yeah. And people with different combinations will get things done. Like, it's really kind of cool when I was in the classroom, and then when I became an administrator and had to see which child was telling me the truth and which child was lying about what happened. It was like I had already started seeing enough in the names. Okay. And I'd be going like, oh man, I do not have stupid written across my forehead. You have no idea all the tools I'm using to do this determination.
I love that. I did the same thing. Working with kids in the school. And it was, when you can be a walking lie detector, there's no hiding the secrets. Right. And kids just don't figure that out. They don't know how you know. It's just that you know.
Right. And even when I became in central office, every once in a while, a principal would say, can we borrow her for the day? We're having a hard time figuring out what's really going on with these kids. And I would go in and just say, just keep the kids separated so they can't converse in between. And here we go. To me, it was great. It was like solving a puzzle.
Mm-hmm. I get that. I actually get that. How does your first name differ from your middle name and the last name? Is there more to find out about a person depending on which name you look at?
It's all together. When you're doing the blueprint, it's the whole name together. But the first name is your essence of now, who you are and your essence of who you are. Your middle name, I always say it's where you go when you're under stress. And it's because that's your natural habitat that you came in with. Those are the habits you brought in with you. And then the last name is that environmental influence. And so it all works together because nobody is alone. Nobody's singular. We're always being influenced by the people around us in our environment.
Is it possible to compare names and know how people will interact with each other?
The answer is yes. You can see where they're going to agree and their potential conflicts. But the best thing, Chris, is you can see the solution to the conflicts. Like,
that's amazing. That's absolutely. I'm as my girlfriend and my best friend is she would say, she's God-smacked.
Well, what's really cool is you can see how people need to hear something and able to take it in. Like somebody with a first vowel of an O or a first vowel of an I would never tell them what to do. I would make suggestions because the I's and the O's aren't going to listen to anything being told to them. They want to be asked. Okay. And so you just make suggestions or you ask questions that would guide that person in the direction of where you'd like to go. Okay. But you're not ever going to tell them. So like, let's say I'm a salesperson and I'm trying to sell to an O or a first vowel of an I, a car. I'm literally going to go up. And if it's the O, I'm going to say, what have you decided on? What have you narrowed it down to? How can I be of assistance for you? In other words, I'm literally going to put myself at their mercy and say, what questions do you need answered? Because you're just here on a fact-finding mission. You're going to make up your own mind. I am never going to suggest, I think this car would be better than that car for you. Okay. Right. This won't happen. And if it's a first vowel of an I, the first thing I'm going to do is say, is this going to be a family car or is this for you personally? And then I'm going to take directions. Okay. So the I's are the natural leaders and the O's are the assigned leaders. Okay. So that's so different than how I would approach, say, for an example, somebody with the first vowel of an E. I'd be looking at, what color do you like? Let me show you the different colors. Let me show you the color combinations with the interiors, because aesthetics is so important to them. I'm going to start with the aesthetics of what are they looking for in a car. Okay. And then I'm going to make suggestions. This combo can really look sharp, or whatever. So you're going to approach something totally differently depending on somebody's communication style.
Does it matter if we change our names? Like a lot of women who get married take on their spouse's last name, or if they use a nickname? Because I do have a nickname, and it's funny, but I do have a nickname.
So people who use a nickname, they're saying, whoever's calling you by that name, they're saying, we don't want to see all of you. We just want to see this part of you. We only want to see the attributes and the characteristics that come with this part of your name or this nickname. Okay. So when we change our last name, that's different, because we're saying we're changing who we're listening to in our environment. So before, we had the family and the ones that we were growing up with, they were our main influencers. And then when we get married and we take on his last name, now his family and his friends he becomes more important to us as an influencer than our initial family.
Oh, wow. That's kind of deep when you think about it. It is literally, and it is changing your environment.
It is. It totally does. And that's represented in the last name. So a lot of people, Chris, will call me for an appointment and say, here's my maiden last name. Here's the last name of the man I'm marrying. Do I want to take his name or not?
Oh.
So my job, as I look at it, is to say, this is what you've got now. This is what you'll get if you take his last name. This is what you'll get if you combine your last names. And I don't make a recommendation unless it makes a new combination that says that after 7 years, there'll be violence in the marriage. And if that's the case, I'll say, whatever you do not take his last name, because you don't want to set that one up.
It's interesting that you can actually predict the difference in the behaviors through the names. That's intriguing for me.
Well, it's the thinking patterns and it's the behaviors and the feelings all show up in the names. How's somebody going to feel? How are they going to think? And how are they going to behave?
Does it matter how you pronounce a name? Whether you put an example here, but the thing is like your name, if I spoke it in English, it would be Sharon, but it's Sharon.
Yeah, it's Sharon. That's why I put the accent over the O, to say this name said differently, like as a visual reminder, because if not, the auditory learners can get it from the hearing it, but the visual learners, the minute they see it written, will revert right back. Okay. So the answer is, it matters if you're hearing a new letter that you would not have heard otherwise. Like in Xena, it starts with an X, but you hear a Z. Mm-hmm. So then as you're interpreting it, you look at both Z and X as the first letter of the first name and the qualities of both, because you're hearing one. So that sound vibration is making an impact, and you've got the letter vibration.
Wow. Is it possible to compare names and know how people will interact with each other? I think I asked you this question already, but how do you know?
Well, you're going to look at the compatibility of the letters. Okay. And some letters absolutely conflict with each other, and there's going to be conflict. And the coolest part, Chris, is it says between the two letters, when there's going to be conflict, who's responsible for making the peace? One's got to rise to the higher, and which letter's never going to do that? It's just not in them. And so as you're looking at the vowels, I put half the vowels in the age of Pisces and half the vowels in the age of Aquarius. Okay. So it's the age of Aquarius vowels that have to rise to the occasion, because it means that they're going on forward past the age of Pisces. So they can retreat a little bit and go backwards and say, yes, I remember how we did this in the age of Pisces, and this is how you work, so I can communicate. Whereas the vowels that sit in the age of Pisces, they're not yet in the age of Aquarius, so they cannot jump forward. Mm-hmm. And so it's really clear which vowels have to be able to say, okay, I get it. I need to come back into this age. And I really feel like we have one foot in both right now.
We do.
While we're on the cusp. And so it's like, for people that have one foot in both, it's like is this person in which age more often than the other age? Which foot do I need to be leaning on, when I'm communicating with this person and able to be clear?
I understand that you're an expert at this, but how do you use this in like hiring people?
Okay.
Because I know that's one of the things that you do.
Yes. So HR departments utilize my services in two different ways. First, they give me a job description and they give me all the applicants' names. And they say, who should we hire? Okay. So I am really looking for the qualities that are in the job description, and would this person have those qualities? Okay. And then I rank them. And what's really cool is a very, very large company decided to hire me on a 6-month contract. And every Monday they would call me. And they didn't want me to be able to look up anything ahead of time. So they would give me the information once I was already on the phone with them, that here's the job description, here's our people. And I never got any feedback. And this went on for, I thought it was torturous, but anyway, it went on for, at the 4.5-month mark was the first time I got feedback. And he said to me, for 4.5 months, within 10 to 15 minutes, you have given me the exact same answer as my team that has read all the resumes, interviewed all the people, and called all the references. And they have recommended number 1 and number 2. And you've hit it right on until today. And today, your number 1 and 2 is our number 2 and 1. What's the difference? So I said, well, you'd probably be happy with either one, but this is why I put this one second. And he said, we wouldn't find that out for a year. And nobody would talk about that during, when we're calling for references. And he says, you've been so accurate, we're going with yours over ours. So that was like 7 years ago now that they hired me, and they still write me every time they're hiring management. But the other way that HR departments utilize my services is when they have 2 employees that are not getting along. And they're both threatening to quit because they can't get along with the other one. So I look at their names and I'll go, okay, this is what employee A needs, and this is what employee B needs, and this is how you can do it without changing who you are, but within your own style. And so what we found so far is every company that's asked me to do that still have both employees working for them. They just had to make some modifications to meet the other one's needs.
I love that, because it's just like getting a new client. It takes hours and hours and hours to get that new client. And once you get a client, to replace a client, it costs more to replace an employee than it was just to have somebody stay in the position that's already trained.
Exactly. And that person that's already there already knows the company way of doing things, already knows the philosophy, already knows the people, they know the procedures. Where you're getting somebody new, just the hiring process of looking at all the resumes and interviewing all the people and calling all the references, that's time consuming. Plus you're paying another employee to help you with that or to do that. So that employee isn't doing what they normally do. Well, so it's really costly.
Yeah. I was in an administrative position. I was a facility duty officer over a jail. And every time we did a hiring process, the entire management team got together and sat in pairs of 2 to interview. And if you had to do this every week, it would be time consuming. It would take up anywhere from 4 to 5 hours, and that's taken away from your job.
Correct. And then you've got to train the person once they're on board. And they're going to constantly have questions for that first 6 months to 2 years.
And one of the biggest things in corrections is officers compromising themselves and bringing in contraband.
Ooh, well, yes. You can see some of that in a name if they're willing to do that.
Well, see, this is why I would, before you ever got here, I'm thinking like, oh, how could this have been used to prevent that high turnover? Because it's like 32% nationally for correctional officers in prisons and jails as far as the turnover, because of the fact you're seeing the worst of humankind.
Well, you're seeing the people that I say that are emphasizing their challenges instead of emphasizing their strengths.
Yes. And making bad choices.
Yeah, because it's emphasizing those challenges. Like, oh, we're going in that direction. But there's certain combinations that scream, I'm a thief, I'm untrustworthy, I'm a psychopath, I'm a sociopath. Mm-hmm. If you read the first book, it's in there, but it's written very nicely. For an example, if somebody's a liar, I don't come out and say, oh my God, you lie all the time. Nobody's going to want to hear that. Okay. So what I say is, so your challenge is, how much truth do you want to tell? Do you want to tell 10% of the truth, 50% of the truth, 90% of the truth? How much truth are you going to tell? Okay. And the people know that they lie, and they just laugh because they know they've been caught, but it hasn't been offensive. And
Or
so,
they think they can excuse their behaviors, so they don't care.
right. Well, and whatever, but they can keep listening. And
Mhm.
my big thing is, I'm not able to help somebody if I say something in an offensive way that turns them off and they shut down. That's not going to work.
Well, I wouldn't do that either. However, the fact is I will say, do you really want to stick with that story, or do you want to tell the truth? I don't call them a liar, but I just call them out on their story
We
that
see,
they're
and that is
telling.
so nice. Is as a school teacher and then as an administrator, I used to look at them and say, "Excuse me a minute, let me check my forehead. Did I have stupid written on this forehead? I don't think so. You want to try that one again?"
Well, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, "Oh, that's not working."
And a lot of times it doesn't, but you also work with lawyers. Can we talk about how you work with lawyers in jury trials? That's kind of interesting.
Okay, so I work with attorneys in two different ways. So the attorney that's just going in front of the judge, they have hired me to analyze all of the judges and their weak spots. So let's just say a weak spot in a judge's fairness issues. I wish more of them had that, but let's just say it was. Okay. Then if I'm the attorney and I'm representing my client, I'm going to say blah, blah, blah happened. And how fair is that? And then da, 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 da. And would you consider that one fair? I'm going to ply on that judge's own weaknesses, their own issues, so that they're going to have more empathy and sympathy for my client. On the other hand, sometimes it's hard for attorneys to get paid. Their bills are high.
Mhm.
So there's certain words or certain phrases that every client needs to hear, depending on the client's name, so that client knows, oh my gosh, this person is really working on my behalf. So I want to make sure that the attorney is aware of that client's needs, so that he can also, or she can also, incorporate those phrases into the defense, so that the person thinks, my gosh, even if they lost, look at how well they worked for me. I want to pay them. Okay.
I get
So
it.
that's if it's a singleton. And so it takes one session to go through all the judges' names, but then there's constant repeats like, okay, this is the name of my client. What do they need
Mhm.
to hear?
Right.
Okay. And
Have
so
you ever worked for the prosecutor side? Just out of curiosity, since I know the criminal justice system.
I worked for both
Okay.
sides. And it's literally what needs to be said, what needs to be heard, and sometimes it's then like when the employee sues the employer and
Mhm.
says that it wasn't fair or whatnot, and the employer will call me and say, we're presenting this case. How does this judge need to hear this? What do we need to make sure we cover? And the first thing I'll start with is, this judge is only interested in facts. Screw your emotions, keep them out. Or
Mhm.
this judge needs to hear the stories, or this judge, whatever that judge's
Mhm.
style is. Now, when it comes to selecting a jury, that to me is the greatest challenge, because when the juror says their name, we have worked ahead of time to say, this is what you're looking for. This is how you're going to present your case. Do you want emotional people? Do you want thinking mental people? Who's your ideal juror for how you're going to present this case in trying to win this case? And then once I have the criteria, literally as I'm a little earbud in their ear, and as every juror's name is said, I will give them a quick ranking. This one matches your criteria and what the percentage is.
Oh, okay. As you were talking about this, have you ever watched Bull?
I have a few times.
He he's got a system too about how to see jurors and what their possible verdict would be or outcome by their basically what you just described, but he did it differently. And I'm thinking, and I thought that movie, because I don't watch much TV, but that's one of the shows I'd watch just because I was curious to see how they were doing the analytics of it, because there was so many times it's like, how did this happen? In most cases, after all the trials I've been through, that I've had to give depositions for and been through, and criminal trials that I've been through, sometimes it wasn't enough just to tell the truth.
Right. And that's why you have to know how to say it. What method does this person hear? because we're all different. It's just like I have a first vowel of an A. And so this is very common of everybody that has a first vowel of an A in their first name. When somebody calls me on the phone and I don't know them and they go, hi, how are you? I think, okay, you're already wasting my time. Get to the point. And I think, don't even start there. Start with, what do you want?
I get it.
And you'll hear me on the phone right away. I'll go, how can I serve you? Because I figure everybody that's calling wants something. So get to the point. How can I do that for you? And I appreciate those people that are succinct. Okay. But some people need it not succinct. Like when I wrote the first copy of my first book and I turned it into the editor, he called me back and he did not know my background. And he says, you write like a math major. And I said, okay, that doesn't even sound kind. And I thought, I am a math major. So how do we write? You so compact everything that I would have to read every paragraph 8 times to get to all the layers that you impacted into one paragraph. He says, I want you to make every paragraph at least a page long. And I thought, oh my God, how do you do that? People need it spelled out. And then when my daughter read it after I'd done that, she said, Mom, it's boring as whatever. And she says, and when you give the class, it's so interesting. And I said, yeah, but I use everybody's name in the class as the examples. And she said, so use people in history. So I started to rewrite the book again using people in history. And I thought, oh, I'm teaching more history because what if people don't know this character or that person or whatever? That doesn't work. And so as we thought about it, I thought, okay, I'm going to write the Inquirer of all books. And I literally subscribed to People Magazine and Inquirer and Star and whatnot, and then footnoted everything and gave credit where I was getting that from, but used stories and examples. And now a lot of people will call me or write me and say, oh, I just hate you. I started your book and I couldn't put it down. And I thought, yeah, it reads like the Inquirer on the learning the system, But
I've always heard to, when you're trying to communicate something new to somebody, a new understanding, write it on a 5th grade level, because that's where most people read at.
Well, I don't even know if we read there anymore. I hate to say that, but
that you might be true, but for understanding,
correct.
It's when, to write it on a 5th grade level so that even those who don't get it and have a closed mind could understand it.
Well, I always think if you write it in a story form as a parable, and if you look at the great books like the Bible, like the Bhagavad Gita, like any of them, they all write with parables and stories. And so I always find myself, as I'm even giving a reading and explaining what I'm seeing in a name, I give tiny little stories. They don't take long to say, but it gets the point across more than just making a flat statement, where my style is, I'll just give you the statements and you can figure it out. And I think that doesn't work.
See, I'm a storyteller. I'm actually a storyteller. And I want people to be able to be engaged and feel the emotion and feel the understanding. And so I get your side, but how do I do it? How do I do it as a storyteller? Do it that way. And it's like, I don't know that I could.
Well, and I was just writing a chapter for an upcoming anthology, and it's called My Mother, Not Myself. Okay. And so I literally sent it to 5 friends when I thought I was through with it. And it grew in length with their comments coming back. And again, I needed to add a little bit more story, a little bit more emotion, a little bit more. But I think that's what my friends are for.
I do the same. I have a group of 5 that I send it out to. Like when I did my PowerPoint presentation, I said, let me know what you think. I need feedback.
Yeah.
And I please be blatant as possible, because that's how you learn and you grow. But with what you do, how does your name determine your destiny? Is an amazing question.
So our souls choose our name and impress it upon the ones that are going to be naming us what we want to be called. So we get our own name that we've designed. Okay. And in that name is the timing and the blueprint of what the overall purpose of our life is, what we've come to do or to become. And then the 7 subsets of, if you conquer these 7 pieces, you will have accomplished the goal. And it's because we're between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius that we get 7. So in other words, in most lifetimes, we're only working on 2 as our goal. But because we're on a cusp, you'll notice that there's always a population explosion on a cusp. And that's because everybody wants to come, because you can accomplish as much in one lifetime as would normally take 3.5 lifetimes. And so then out of the 7, the first 2 would be the 2 if that's all you did. And people usually get really good at them. And I call those the boomerang ones, because they're going to keep coming around and hitting you different ways, different heights, different people, different whatever. But you're going to get that your entire life, so that you really get the depth and the breadth of those 2 concepts. And the next 3, I consider the one and dones. It's kind of like if you were going to learn how to play Mozart on the piano, and then you wanted to switch to Bach, you don't have to relearn how to play the piano. You've got a new tool, you just one and done, and just, rinse and repeat. And then the last 2 is what I call the reward ones, that if you can accomplish these 2 in this lifetime, you get the reward right there because of it. You don't have to wait for anything. It comes right away, and it's right there. So the first 2, the being the boomerangs, I always say that all of them were gaining experiences. Like, we all know that E = mc squared, Einstein's theory of relativity. But most of us have not worked with that formula. So we don't know where the numbers come from. They go into the formula. We don't know when to apply the formula. We don't know when we need to tweak it or use a different formula would be more appropriate, because we don't have the experience to go with it. Right. So we're here on Earth. We have all access to all knowledge if you tune into the oneness. And a lot of people meditate and tune in. Okay. And there's different ways of tuning in. And so we have access to the knowledge, but we don't have the experience to know the depth and the breadth of that particular knowledge that we hold, just like Einstein's theory. And so we're here on Earth to get the depth and the breadth. And that's what our 7 things are. And then there's an overall, what I call the arcing umbrella, that all 7 of them fit under. Bless you.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
And so that overall arcing umbrella says, here's the theme for this lifetime.
Wow, I love that answer. Could this same method be used to start a conversation with someone that you've just met?
Yes, because you look at their communication style. Like, if I'm going to start a conversation with you, Chris, I'm going to ask about your family and how everybody is, and about all the people you're in contact with. How do you keep up with them? Okay.
I have a very small circle.
Well, a lot of us have
small circle. Intentionally.
A lot of us have a small circle because we realize that's all the time we have.
No, this is purely by choice because of growing up.
But if you look at it, people with larger circles, how much time do you have for everybody in that circle?
I'm not sure. I don't even care. I don't even want to know.
I don't think it's really possible. I think it's good to have that smaller circle so you can really share with those people, and then you can have a lot of acquaintances, but your own circle's tight.
I agree. I agree with that but the fact is that, for me, it's, have you never had a chance to dream when you were a kid?
I did, because I was alone a lot.
I didn't, because I was surviving life. So I never dreamed. It wasn't until I became an adult and realized I could have dreams. And it wasn't that I had dreams. It was like, okay, I'm be one of 2 people out of 11 that's going to go to college. That's me. That's who I am. Again, taking charge. And then just a lot of times I would say something and then just go do it. And then I would do the summers too, because once I got in it, I wanted to be done with it.
Right.
So it's just like at 60, when up here in Tennessee, I'm in law enforcement, and I had to get post-certified in Tennessee. I went to the police academy. Everybody was looking at me like I'm crazy, but I'm like, okay, no. And I went and did it 12 weeks. I wasn't the fastest runner, but I outran 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds. I wasn't the fastest because we had amazing athletes in the group. But I wasn't the last one. And that's why that was my personal choice.
And I love the fact that you're in Tennessee, because so am I.
I did not know that. But the fact is how many people at 60 will put themselves through the police academy to get post-certified in another state? Not many.
Right. Not many.
And I believe I can do anything. So that's just my understanding. I don't say I'm going to do it. I just go do it.
Well, but I find that people are either talkers or action takers. They're not usually the same. It's like the energy either goes into talking about something or the energy goes into doing it.
Mm-hmm. And you're the first person that understands that I've explained this to, because it's like, I don't need to talk. I'm not a talker. I've never been a real talker or one of those that has to brag about anything, but I just go do.
Right. And I only talk about stuff once it's done, because if not, you're taking the energy away from the project itself.
And I love the fact that you get me. It's like, my tribe, she's arrived.
The coolest thing is, once you understand how to interpret a name, everybody that you meet when you're talking with them will say, oh, I've just made a new BBF or BFF, because this person gets me. And that's why I am spending so much time doing my best to get this out there, because one, it's easy to learn. The communication style is free and available on the website. And I'm doing the best I can to say, look at how easy this is. And I look at it as no different than when I taught math, and my kids, the lights would go off and they go, oh my God, this is easy. We always thought it was hard. And I go, no, it's just patterns. And then you watch how the patterns repeat or how they get tweaked, but it's just like following a recipe. It's just a pattern. Just learn which patterns go with which kind of problems,
I love the way you say that, because in school, the one thing I knew is I had to get an education. That's all I knew, is I had to get an education. And I loved math. I did algebra 1 and 2 in 7th and 8th grade. When I went to 9th grade, they put me in a general math class.
Oh, that was such a disservice.
It was, but when I went to my counselor, she says, well, have your parents come in and talk to us. We don't have a class to put you in. And I said, well, and I was that street kid at that moment in time. And I said, I don't have parents, and there's nobody that gives two shits, what classes I take. I said, so F you. And I slammed her door on my way out. And I went back to the math teacher and I said, give me your final. I said, and I'm not going to be here, so don't mark me absent. I'm just not going to be here. I took his final, and he says, why are they putting you in here? And I said, because I don't have parents to defend me.
Wow.
So he didn't mark me absent. He gave me an A. I took his first, second, and third quarter test and his final in an hour and a half and completed it. But to be going from algebra 1 and 2 to having to take a general math class was a slap in the face. And then the education system at that time, we're talking back in the 70s, didn't give two hoots. And if you didn't have somebody that could speak for you, you were SOL.
Yeah. And I think that's individual by school, literally by school, not even by school district, because some schools have a really caring attitude and the children are so fortunate to be there, and others don't. And over my 40 years, and I was in 11 states and in 4 countries, so we moved a lot, teaching or as an administrator, what I realized was whatever that top person was, it filtered down. And that more and more, what I want to call in my professional view, psychopaths and sociopaths were the ones at the top. And it became harder and harder to be a caring teacher because you had to follow these insane practices.
I agree. And I saw the same thing in my time. And I wasn't even an educator. I was the security specialist. I was the person in charge to keep everybody safe. But even in the safety practices, they were really weird. Certain things would be okay. Certain things wouldn't be okay. And that's where they thought it wasn't okay to have this number of people there, is where all the problems would happen. It's like, there's a reason why I recommended this. You wanted my expertise. Here's my expertise. So yeah. I get it. Luckily enough, this last school that I was at, I had an amazing administrator. He was the kind of person that loved kids and knew the value of education.
Oh, it so shows when somebody cares. I remember being shocked when I was teaching in Japan and I caught a kid doing graffiti on the wall after school, but I'd been working late. So I took the kid up to the office because I knew the vice principal was working late that day too. And I said, this is what I saw. And so I want to give this child to you. And he looked at me and he said, what was the kid writing? And I said, what difference does it make? He's writing on the wall. What difference does it make what he's saying? And the administrator looked at me and says, well, if he wasn't using bad words, we don't discipline him. And I thought, oh, so it's okay to decorate the walls with spray paint as long as you're not using bad language. And I thought, screw this. And so I came back out of the administrator's office and I looked at the child and I said, we now know how to handle this. Come on back. I'm going to call your mom and you're going to be here cleaning this off. And your mom can come help you if she wants to, or bring supplies to help you do it better than what I've got. But I just thought, oh my goodness gracious, it doesn't matter unless they're using bad words. No, it's the action itself, but that was the first time I was so shocked, and I was just like, oh my gosh, how can this be?
I was at a school that was 78% Black, 20% Hispanic, and 0.01 white. That wasn't a big deal, but it wasn't a community school. That was the problem, because you brought in kids from different areas and they all wanted to claim sections of the school as their territory. And we had a problem with gangs, but we also had a problem with fights. And there would be times we'd have fights at 50, 60 kids would be fighting at one time.
Oh, that's just horrible. I've been at one of the schools.
However, the fact is I went to an administrator and who was over security at the time. And I told her in front of the two SROs, I says, we're supposed to have this huge fight at lunch. And this SRO says, well, let's just let them do their thing and we'll just arrest everybody. And she agreed. And I'm like, no. And I went past her to the principal and I said, listen, I just communicated this to my supervisor and this is what she's recommending as an outcome. I said, this is not about arresting kids. This is about showing them how to stop the behavior before they do it. Right. And this principal went on a tirade. He called her in. He called the SROs in. He says, when my specialist comes to you and tells you something, you do not second guess her recommendations because she's speaking for me. She and I have the same philosophy about prevention.
Well, and it's nice that you worked for somebody who agreed with that.
But I didn't know it at the time. I mean, I overstepped it wasn't even I overstepped my bounds, but there was no way, because again, do I want 50, 60 kids fighting and get hurt in the process by trying to break it up? And I knew about it ahead of time. So get people there, put people out about it and put the word out. Say, I know about your fight. Don't do it here. What you do in your community, that's on you, but don't do it here. Don't, because you get double hit. You get adjudicated by the police, but you also get a school consequence. It's double jeopardy. Don't do it here. And that's how I prevented a lot of stuff. But it was, again, just to show you how administration depends on the individual person. Yes, absolutely. I wish I would have known you then. I would have been, okay, we got to talk.
I love my friends that still have kids in school or whatnot, and will call me and say, here's the situation. How do I approach the teacher, or what direction do I go, or what are my steps, or what am I to make this right? And just like one of them just called recently and said, they won't even interview or consider my child for college for next year, even though he qualifies and he got all the stuff in on deadlines. So what's my next step?
Wow.
And I walked it all through, and she just called me 2 days ago and said, my kid's in, but it's like you have to know the system from within to know what to do. And so for those that are listening, if you still have kids in school and you need help doing something, call a teacher that cares, even if that teacher's at a different school, because we know the system.
Yes. I love that. I love that advice. I actually have been helping students that I knew, because I was at this high school for 15 years. Make a long story short, and a couple of them have become teachers. And now they're seeing the inside or the backstory of education. And this one was having problems. And I said, well, what does your contract say? She goes, well, I have it somewhere. I said, that as a teacher is your Bible. That's your protection. That's what you need to understand, because if you do anything without it, they're going to hold it against you. Well, they were doing things off the cuff that was totally wrong and making accusations, put it in writing, but they never put in writing that she'd been cleared. That's wrong. It is wrong, but the fact is, and she stood on it, and I directed her to a friend of mine who's now the chief of police for the school board for that district. And I worked for the district that Stoneman Douglas is in South Florida, where they had that shooting
You
at
know, when
Parkland.
they had that shooting, I was next door in Boca Raton at a school, right next door. That was the district borderline, and we were the next school in the next district.
In
And
the
that
next county, but yes, but I knew Scott Fye, the coach. I was a girls football coach because we did flag football down there. And I didn't know we had this connection in South Florida between you and I.
Yeah.
However, he was the only one of the administration and security that went towards that kid trying to save lives and was killed in the process.
Which is really sad. And yet that's what we're trained to do when we really care about the kids. And I remember I used to always tell the kids, the classroom door is always locked for a reason. You make me go and answer that door because you don't know what's on the other side. And we don't just open the door willy-nilly. And after that event happened, I looked at the kids and I said, so what have we learned from this? What do we want to make sure that I'm always saying to do that some of you guys don't want to listen in here and you just try to race to the door ahead of me? And I said, this is why you never open that door. You let the teacher do it. I don't care what classroom you're in. Do not get up. You let the teacher do it. It's why we have glass in our doors so that we can react and tell you how to stay safe. Because you guys, I used to tell them, you guys think our number one job is to teach you and educate you, but our number one job is to keep you safe. And our number two job is to educate you.
It's true. Most people don't understand that. Most people don't understand that. And there's more demons that what happens in schools happens in the community. So whatever the community allows, but in this case, it not being a community school. So you're bringing things from outer communities, which was like the overflow of different schools in different areas. But there was some amazing kids there that ended up doing amazing things.
Oh,
it was all about choice. It was all about choice.
Kids. I think all of us that stay in schools love kids, or we wouldn't stick around as long as we do. But anyway, is there anything else that you wanted to know about names?
How could you use your system to motivate others?
What's really cool is relationships are key to the quality of life. If you have good relationships, you have a good quality of life. Even if you're poor, and you may not have a lot of other things, but everybody gets together and they help each other and they support each other. Okay, so relationships are key. And when you're utilizing namology science, it literally says how to make a permanent friend out of somebody, how to have a temporary friend, how to communicate with this person, what's important to that person. It literally shows you how they accept love. How you can get into their world and communicate in such a way that they're really happy that you're there.
I love that. I love that. I'm so honored. I'm so thankful you were here with me today, Sharon. Or Sharon?
Sharon.
Okay. Well, yes, I said it right. I'm horrible with names, and I always like, I'm going to screw it up. So hold on just one second. It takes a special kind of individual to dream their dreams, their thoughts, their ideas, and turn it into reality. Sharon has created an amazing program that is affecting so many lives and stayed the course and had the courage to go through the follow through. Sharon with Wyeth, you've championed yourself. We now know who you've become. Thank you for sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, and your programs with us here today.